Good morning and good evening, and welcome to this session. This is a session on climate and gender from Sri Lanka. It's best foot forward, global solutions for these two major roadblocks. So today I'm joined by three eminent ladies who are going to join this discussion, where we're going to explore some of the corporate solutions to this problem, which has been defined in the past 24 hours, or rather the past 48 hours, as being one which is accelerating not only in its rapidity, but also in its scale, in the potential to completely disrupt human life support systems, but also one in which there is no option for failure. And failure is not an option is the defining theme in this discussion. So I'm joined here by Sonali from John Keel's Holdings, by Nadisha from Unilever Sri Lanka, and by Tanuja from PMS Holdings in Sri Lanka. I am Dilhan Fernando from UNGC Sri Lanka and Dilma T, and honored to have you with us. So with that, maybe we'll start without further ado. The opportunity for corporates to engage in this area of climate, and the first part of this discussion we're going to focus on climate, is one that is goes beyond an opportunity. It goes into the realm of an obligation that is clearly a part of a survival of any business or any individual. So we're starting with this quick overview so that you can have a look at something at our perspective. And I'm wearing the Dilma cap now, our perspective on how a business could actually influence this discussion and this debate, but also deliver tangible action. We're referring here to the ecosystem. So we talk about a collection of activities simply because a business can, through its ability to engage consumers, ability to impart knowledge, ability to network and build like-minded businesses into a coalition for the common good. It has a unique ability. And I'm presenting here the ecosystem that we have built around our brand, because action alone is important, but advocacy plays a critical role in being able to engage with other businesses. And in this case, you have Biodiversity Sri Lanka, UNGC, the Global Compact Network Sri Lanka, and of course, Climate Reality. So going on, looking at the fact that CSR should not be confused with climate action, there is a fourfold strategy that we have put together, which embeds climate action, climate research, climate education, and climate advocacy into the heart of our business. And why we talk of this is that as a business, and particularly in our case, as a business that is based on agriculture and having an enduring connection with nature, we have not simply an obligation from a moral and ethical point of view, but a critical ability to bring together science, to bring together government, to act as the interface in building solutions that we can deliver not only amongst small farmers, but amongst our own peers and of course in our own business. And so this is the broad overview within the limitations of time that we have here. Some of the initiatives, when we talk about an approach, a multifaceted approach to the issue, here are some examples looking at sustainability, looking at supply chain. That is an absolute mandatory minimum for a business today, taking the scale and the level of acceleration, the rapidity of the crisis as we are seeing now. If you consider the comments that Mr. Gutierrez shared yesterday, climate change is undoubtedly the defining issue of our time. And he also talked about climate change moving faster than we are, every half degree making a world of difference. And so it's also about building and preserving stability in markets in which we engage beyond the moral argument. And so other areas, looking at, in our case, tea, spices, and so on, building climate resilience into our operations not only helps us to address the issue that we are faced with, but it is also building an incredible resilience. But amazingly, in the case of tea, using technologies like biochar and so on, has been able to deliver yield and quality improvements. Now, this is something that is really dramatic because there are solutions. Of course, the solutions to many of the issues that we see in the climate have been evident since 2005. But what we are seeing now is with the technological adaptation and the changes to nature-based solutions, we're also seeing the possibility of improving the quality of our product, enhancing the commercial aspects of our product, but ultimately ensuring the survival of our business, not simply doing it for the moral reason. The moral and ethical reason is a huge one, that's critical, but beyond that, there is a very strong commercial rationale for building a climate resilience into your climate adaptation into your business. And energy, looking at green energy, of course, that is a critical element in this whole discussion of how we look to a post-COVID environment, not only in terms of generating employment, but also in terms of the green recovery. These are themes that we have heard explained in some detail, so I won't dwell on it. These are some of the things we do in the area of green energy. And amongst, I think one of the key things is for us to set a target. And I think in each of the panelists who will talk in a moment, we have set clear targets for 2025, or in our case, 2030. And in our case here, it's about achieving carbon negativity by 2030. There is a strong livelihood aspect, clearly. And what we are seeing in this, as we are losing some of the conventional jobs, as a nation and as a business, we need to be promoting the idea that there should be post-COVID adapted jobs. I know there's a new normal, and echoing the words that have been spoken by eminent speakers yesterday, there is a very strong rationale for building around, for example, in this case, building an entire employment opportunity around planting, this objective of planting 2 million trees. In the first million, we planted cashew trees. And what that did was to help build livelihoods, but then adding on the cashew processing, adding on the possibility of value addition, which is what businesses do best, we have managed to build several hundred small entrepreneurs who are now able to stand on their own. So the livelihood aspect of climate adaptation is also something that is so very critical. Climate smart farmers, I don't need to tell you about that, but this is our climate change research and adaptation center. And I'm skipping through this, creative ways of engaging, because climate education is a very important part of our, what we do as businesses is engage with consumers. And so using art in this case to communicate and help people to understand, awareness is critical to this whole exercise. Ultimately, translating all of that into advocacy is so very important. And so I think with that, yes, and this beautiful quote from Arundhati, I'm going to invite Sonali, who's representing John Keel's Holdings in Sri Lanka, to talk to us a little bit. Sonali, if I can invite you to bring your presentation on, I'm going to stop sharing now, and there we are. Sonali, I'll mute my microphone if you can.
Thanks, Divan. Okay. Just a second. Okay, guys, thank you and good afternoon. I'll just give you a little bit of a brief on our company. John Keel's Holdings is Sri Lanka's largest conglomerate. We work in 7 different industry sectors, and we're employers of 20,000 plus people.
Sonali, if you could please double click on the presentation, it will bring it up so that we can all see it a little larger.
I think if the participants double click on that, that should.
Okay. That's fine. Okay, sorry, please continue.
Yeah. Okay. So our sustainability journey began in 2008. Obviously, we have a number of different environmental focus areas, but I'll focus on our climate action today. So one of the main challenges that we have in a group of our size is making sure that all our companies have a consistency in focus and in the prioritization of key issues, whilst also at the same time taking ownership of their own sustainability strategies and initiatives. So how we've managed that is at a group level, we have an energy and emissions policy. And this requires all our businesses to minimize energy and emissions through obviously the implementation of a number of different energy saving initiatives. And very early on, we realized the value in benchmarking our performance against regional and local companies. And this is then monitored and reported on a quarterly basis. And really now, emissions management and energy management are management objectives for our key businesses. And as this program matured, we've also extended this to our value chain through assessments on their environmental performance, through our supplier code of conduct, and through ongoing engagement and awareness creation. In the context of a global push towards setting emissions targets, and if you're looking at initiatives like the Science-Based Target Initiative, JKH in 2016 set energy and water reduction goals for 2020. And we set a 12% energy reduction goal by this date. And to achieve this, we actually implemented over 300 initiatives in this period. We had some challenges actually achieving this, internal and external factors, but we really felt that there were strong learnings and benefits from the exercise that's helped us create a culture of setting targets and will provide a foundation for us to build on for a future goal. So renewable energy is a core pillar of our climate strategy. We are currently meeting about 11% of our energy requirement through renewable means, such as biomass and solar. And we're seeing growing investments in key sectors that are typically high energy intensive sectors, such as retail, where now we have over 50% of our supermarkets utilizing solar energy. In the leisure sector, we've seen hotels in Sri Lanka and the Maldives use solar, and we've also recently just seen installation in our consumer food sector as well. We also do forestry programs. Our plantation sector, along with the group CSR entity, John Keel's Foundation, implemented a 5-year tree planting project with some of the smallholders in the vicinity of our factories. And this project coupled climate impacts with livelihood, biodiversity, and community impacts. And we're currently in the second phase, which has a slightly larger reach. And as a group, we're in the process of looking at a project on a larger scale, on a group level, looking at degraded forest lands near the Sinharaja region. In terms of carbon neutrality, our destination management company, Walker's Tours, is South Asia's first certified carbon neutral vehicle fleet. This program has been implemented since 2012. And in addition to this, the company's strategy is over the long run to shift the composition of its fleet towards hybrids. So then what we're seeing is really a declining trend in their carbon footprint, and then obviously the number of offsets needed to achieve carbon neutrality. So I'll just end with our framework to kind of give you an idea of how we've really put in place these kind of initiatives throughout our group. And hopefully we were able to give you some insight on our climate strategy and activities. And I'll stop sharing and hand over to Tanuja.
Thank you, Sonali, and thank you for being on time. So we now invite Nadisha to share a Unilever Sri Lanka perspective.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dirhan. Can you see my slide?
Looking good.
Thank you. All right. So gender equality is now a really urgent call for action. And the reason for that is if we continue at the current pace, it will take at least another 250 years or more to get to where we want to. So we need to really, as corporates, as governments, policymakers, as societies, create a real burning platform for this. And if you ask why, because first and foremost, it's the fair and right thing to do. And also there is a very clear business case for it. The closer you find your employee population getting to 50-50, you'll find that the innovation rate really improves, profit improves, sustainability, health and hygiene, so many dimensions really improve, and there's a lot of research around this. So this is verified. Now, if you look at how Unilever Sri Lanka has approached this, we have taken a hardware and a software type of an approach. So in the hardware side of things, it talks about a very strong governance framework. It's about really holding people accountable and holding people responsible for achieving a certain gender target. And how we have done that is by giving all senior leaders a target, a particular number to achieve every year. And this number is a non-negotiable, irrespective of what is happening in the environment. It might be a year where we are restructuring, for example, or it might be the COVID crisis we are in, but the number doesn't change. It's a non-negotiable. And achieving this number has a direct impact for all leaders in how they get financially rewarded at the end of the year, as well as their career progression. So this has really helped us to make progress in this. And that is why you see, if you take Unilever Sri Lanka, our topmost leadership team, the management committee or the board, as you call it, 56% are women right now. And all of our senior leadership positions are occupied by 40 plus females. So another thing that we have brought in for the hardware is whenever there's a vacancy, to make sure that there's a balanced slate of CVs and candidates. Now, particularly, this is important in functions like sales and supply chain, where traditionally it has been very low in female numbers. But the balanced slate stops at the interview process, because from there onwards, it's purely merit-based selection. And that doesn't really make an impact in how we choose a talent. It's up to the point of bringing a balanced slate of CVs. The software side is equally very important, because we can't do this without the support of men. So one of the biggest programs we have had is Men as Allies. The respect, the understanding, and the support we need from men to really drive this, and the empathy and the care for male colleagues to see the female colleagues, depending on their lifestyle, as the wife, the daughter, the sister, and to really support. Without this support, we cannot really implement policies like paid maternity leave for 6 months and so on. So that has really, really helped us. And if we look at how we contribute to the country, we look at really promoting economic inclusion of women, especially at rural areas, through giving them a really sustainable livelihood through the door-to-door sale of Unilever products. And while we started quite some time ago, now we have over 3,500 lady entrepreneurs who are really making a solid financial and social stable, getting that stability through this program. And it's not only that, it's not only about being a really great salesperson, it's also about getting training on various aspects for the upliftment of their livelihood, as well as other benefits like their kids getting scholarships and their village getting various projects for the upliftment of the village. So these ladies, as a result, are seen as real community thought leaders in that sense. So these are very briefly a few things that we do. And I will stop at this point and hand it over back to Dilhan. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadisha. And so we have next Anuja, who's going to talk to us about the PMS Holdings example. Anuja, please.
Thank you, Dilhan. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. Am I clear enough? Can you hear me?
I think you need to move your microphone a little bit closer. And
Any better?
perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And you can see my slides.
Yes, all good.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. We at MAS are privileged to be presenting to this distinguished forum. I will give a really quick download of what the Women Go Beyond program at MAS is. But first, MAS Holdings is a design to delivery solutions provider in manufacturing, apparel, and textile. We're a private company operating for over 30 years, headquartered out of Sri Lanka, and we have over 98,000 employees globally currently, and 70% or more of that workforce is female. So for MAS, focusing on women's empowerment and gender equality was an obvious choice. And I have to say that even before we started our program, which is Women Go Beyond, a focused strategic program in 2003, we as an organization, as founders, identified that there are specific challenges that women face when coming into the workplace, and that we are well placed in the apparel industry in South Asia, based in rural communities, to be addressing the gaps in access, in opportunities that women have. So I want to say that a lot of this work started by addressing a need and also understanding that it is the right thing to do. And that still drives us at the core of it. But as Ilhan and Sonali and also Nadisha mentioned, there is a very clear business case for why gender equality is beneficial to all of us. As a program, we launched in 2003, and since then, joining networks such as the UN Global Compact helped us to strategize, helped us to align ourselves with global principles and best practices, and also kept us accountable. We signed up to the UN Women's Empowerment Principles in 2013, and now the work that we do addresses gender equality from many different angles, because we've realized that if we are to actually get to a point where we eliminate discrimination, we have to address many different issues. Currently at MAS, our women's empowerment and gender equality work forms a key pillar in our sustainability strategy. And our sustainability strategy is aligned with business strategy and goals for 2025. The reason I mention this is because we have found that aligning business strategies with sustainability strategies helps us to drive this work, holds us accountable. We introduced a social sustainability scoring tool for CEOs, which means that this work is not only led by sustainability leads, but also business heads are held responsible, which is important, I think, in times of crisis like this, especially because sustainability agendas are not the first to take a hit in times when times get difficult. We work in all these many different areas, but if I were to quickly touch on women's health and also preventing gender-based violence, we've realized that this work is more important now than ever before with the pandemic and what has been happening. So we've launched specific programming to address the current situation. And if I were to talk about what we mean by skill development, there is skill development outside the job role. So that's everything from catering, tailoring, making sustainable product, art, dancing, music, so many areas where what we've realized is it's developed female entrepreneurs. And that is something that, again, we realize now is more important than ever for our workforce, because we have women who have started their own businesses, are supporting their communities and their families while working in our organization. And now, with the crisis that we are facing, they will be important for their communities and their families. And another very important piece of work that we do through the program is what we call recognizing and rewarding exceptional women. This is something that we launched in 2004 and started with the factory floor level worker. But now it's an award ceremony which brings together people from all over the group. And it has that powerful tool of telling stories of exceptional women. We have women who have really risen above challenging circumstances, who are supporting their communities, who are leaders, not only in the organization, but also in their communities. And there's a lot of development work that happens with them, mentorship, but also they are role models for the rest of the organization. The reason I mentioned this program is because connected to driving these agendas from the top is also creating the culture. So within MAS, there is a culture that understands that this work is core to us as a business, and that at the factory floor level, it earns a lot of buy-in from the factory managers to the GMs who have to actually run these programs and give us the time to do this work. With all of that work that has been happening for over 16 years, we identified about 3 years ago that we're not where we want to be when it comes to representation in management. So we set an extremely audacious goal of 1-to-1 gender representation by 2025 in management. While that's a massive stretch, what that has taught us is we need active intervention, specific challenges to be addressed. Maybe we'll talk about that a little later during the discussion, but that's the program in a nutshell. And why this work is so important for us as a business is, one, it gives us a skilled workforce, healthier, more motivated, able to deal with crisis and adapt better and produce better work product. It also means buy-in from customers for us, long-term customers and new customers and markets that approach us because of this work. And also, of course, very importantly, our consumer, who is now more than ever asking for that accountability and traceability. I'm going to stop there. And Dilhan, hand over to you.
Thank you, Tanuja. Thank you also for staying on time. We'll the panel discussion now. So we have two areas, climate and gender, for which the failure is not an option. And I think looking at the green recovery, we have the greatest potential not only in building climate-based or nature-based solutions, but also in ensuring that we have a full participation of women. And some of the examples that we saw are truly incredible to see. And I think perhaps if I can start with a question to Tanuja, I'm really excited by what you talked about in terms of female entrepreneurship. Can I ask you to elaborate a little bit more on that, Tanuja?
Yeah, actually, Dilhan, how it works is, like I said, we do training and development in many different areas. And what we realized is with shift-based work, especially in the apparel industry, it gives you the opportunity to do something else, to be able to be an entrepreneur, start your own thing, and work in the organization. And we have, for example, I have Taranga, who works at Bodyline, who we met last year through the award program. She did one of the curtain making courses at MAS, and then she realized she'll start providing interior decor and curtain making for some of her co-workers, because we're also a marketplace. We're such a massive population. She realized she's good at it. Business picked up, and then she realized that people like to install what is called decorative ceilings in their homes, and she found a supplier for that and started doing ceilings and curtains. Then she realized people want their fences built and gates put up, so she found 2 people that she's employing now to do ironworks. This inherent capability that she has, this is just one example of many we have like that, was just slightly, almost mildly supported by us as an organization by doing trainings in different things, getting her to look at business planning, marketing, branding, and so on. And what we realize is that today in their communities, these women are employing other people from their villages. They are supporting families. They are employing their husbands quite often because they want to continue working in the organization. And when they grow and become successful, they pull in people from their communities. And we think that is an interesting framework and a structure to look at going forward, especially in this post-COVID era.
I salute you for that, Tanuja. That's a fantastic example. And I think entrepreneurship is particularly important because it embodies empowerment, but also dignity. And it is something that is so replicable. And I want to throw in a small example that we have at the MJF Foundation, which is in connection with an issue we had many years ago of domestic violence, whereby empowering the woman and giving her the possibility of earning something, of doing something that was compatible with her lifestyle, we were able to address a much bigger situation that could have led to the separation of the family. So this leads very nicely to something that Nadisha mentioned to me earlier. She talked about inclusivity and how, whilst you invite people to the party, you also need to ask them to dance, or words to that effect. I'm sorry if I didn't do justice to what you said, Nadisha, but please tell us about inclusivity and what you're doing in that area.
Yes, so thanks, Dilhan. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, gender is one of the key things. We are looking at it from a diversity point of view. But we also look at other aspects of diversity, including disability and so on. Now, getting the numbers is one, like you very rightly said, but getting people to then feel belonging is the more important thing. So we have this saying that diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. So how do you help a person to really feel like they belong? Here we really improve employees' awareness on a thing we call unconscious bias. And that is what usually gets in the way, and you call it unconscious bias because it's a blind spot, whether it is race, religion, nationality, gender, and various other things. You might be not including a person, and by doing that, you are really losing out on the insights, the creativity, and the diverse views that can come onto the table. So we run a program to really help people to understand what your own unconscious biases are, and how do you then really help people to feel that they belong, and help people to feel respected and valued, which is a cornerstone for anybody to perform as well as to bring out the best in yourself. Thanks.
You mentioned something that was, I think, is often overlooked. You talked about men as in your presentation. Can I ask you just to give us a quick summary of how that might work?
So, communication, Dilhan, sometimes this kind of a program is a journey. And for us, it's been at least 10 years, where you are building a culture where people feel and they really understand the importance of having that diversity in the workforce. I myself worked in sales for 2 years, and I was the first female senior leader in the entire company history of 75 years at that time to have been in the sales function. And that experience gave my male colleagues a first-hand experience of the benefits of having a different person in the team. While we cannot stereotype that men are like this and women are like this, there are some inherent differences in the way we approach things and in the way we think that brings a really lovely flavor to everything. So that was a really beautiful experience, and then people really understood that we need more of this. Yeah, that is one. Secondly, it's also about over-communicating. Generally, for a message to land, you need to tell it 9 times. And if you have children, you will empathize with this. 99 times also doesn't do the trick sometimes. But when you hear a message over and over, it starts becoming, because culture is how you think and behave. It's a combination of those. Then people start really thinking, because you get stark statements by people in the country as well as in the world. Why don't you get more women into the workforce? And you'll hear people saying things like, yeah, but then, they get pregnant and they go away. Versus people now are seeing a female colleague pregnant and saying, oh, wow, what a blessing, congratulations, right? So that whole empathetic part it's a journey. You need to build it to see it not as a problem, but as a blessing, and to give that support. Yeah.
Thank you, Sonali. Thank you for being patient. JKH has an admirable commitment to caring for the climate and the sustainability areas. Can you maybe just share with us some of the key factors in terms of embedding, rather than perhaps doing what is seen to be good in the public or the consumer's eye, but rather embedding into your business? What are key factors that you would advise others who are listening to do?
Sure, Dilhan, thanks. Well, it's a lot about the specific business, and you have to build a structure that works for your business and your organization. It's not a one-size-fits-all at all. So for us, it's like I said, it's been a long journey. It's been almost 12 years now. And it's been a case of just building very slowly and seeing steady progress in terms of our framework. So in our case, given the scale and diversity of the group, obviously we face challenges in ensuring alignment of different strategies, different cultures, and we had to really build a group-wide culture as a whole. So, as I said, we needed a structure that was unique to us. So how we've done it is we have both a centralized and a decentralized system. So I'm at really the central group division for sustainability, but we also have our individual businesses will have what we call sustainability champions. And then they are responsible for their own businesses strategy, their own businesses initiatives. And so we really tried through our framework to take it from a simple reporting framework to something that is, as you said, embedded in our DNA. So we treat it like on par with our financial data. We have a very systematic way of, over the group, engaging our stakeholders, finding out the issues, and then building policies around that, and building quantifiable monitoring and tracking processes that then on a management committee level are really discussed alongside financial indicators. And that has really worked for us over the last year. So from really making part and parcel of how we do business, it's not just an add-on, it's really included in everything we do.
Thank you. Tanuja, it's clear that we are neither going to win the, you can't say it's a war, but the adaptation of implementation of nature-based solutions against climate change to mitigate the worst effects of climate change, nor are we going to win a green recovery effort if we do not embrace the potential and the dignity of women. So the global gender gap, you're probably familiar with this in the World Economic Forum. It says it will take 257 years at the present rate to close the economic gender gap. Are there any specific areas that you believe we should focus on as we look to trying to bridge that deficit?
I think, Dilhan, how we look at it for ourselves as a program, I think, like I mentioned, there are the different elements that have to be addressed, from health to education, awareness, access to safety, safe working environments, and safe environments to live in. But also when it comes to decision making and leadership, Because what we realize as an organization is that while there are multiple angles to address this from, we have to make sure that there is actual participation in decision making, in representation and giving voice. A massive challenge there that we found is, I mean, it's very interesting for me to listen to Nadisha, whose organization is far more along the way in that journey in getting the numbers. We are currently at 21% women in management as an organization. But what we realize is that with historic social, cultural issues, the same things that Nadisha is talking about, unconscious bias, for example. For us, it was harder because I think as an organization that has always worked on women's empowerment and had non-discrimination policies, we almost face a challenge where people say, oh, but that's not an issue here. And that's something I think as a society we have to address, where these are not things we grew up, the patriarchal systems, historic reasons. To date, women carry the majority of responsibility for household and childcare responsibilities. So unless we make this, we relook at the way we work in terms of time, in terms of flexible work arrangements, childcare, and we also look at understand socialization and how little girls and boys are brought up differently to compete differently. So, for example, mentorship and sponsorship programs for women specifically. And there's a gamut of things we have to address, but we have to identify that there are gaps. I think that's the first place. To know that there are gaps, that we are, although we say, for example, that we are an equal opportunity employer, that's not enough if our structures and our infrastructure doesn't really support everyone to compete in the same way. And I think we need to understand that across industries and spheres.
So Tanuja and Nadisha, a question to both of you from Yasangi Ramdeni. We are now moving into the Q&A part of it. You can probably see what Yasangi's question is, but if I can ask you what she concludes with, what kind of systemic changes can we introduce through workplaces to promote a change in the patriarchal mindset in our communities? Tanuja, if you could start, and maybe Nadisha prepare a comment also.
Okay, I think the first thing is what Nadisha and I both mentioned in terms of understanding our own biases and drawing in men and women, because it's not only men who have biases. So to have that conversation and get us started as corporates, at an organization level. It's not only something we need at home, it's something we need in our corporates. But also then to re-look at workplaces. Because the question is asking about organizations, and because the way we're structured is very much for someone who has the ability to work from morning till evening without family responsibilities, for example. Men and women both can't work like that anymore. So as organizations, we have to relook at the way we work and structure ourselves differently to support people, men and women, to be able to participate better in their lives and at work. And I think that breaks down certain mentalities, and that helps to relook at all of these structures, including power structures.
And yeah, thanks, Tanu. And if I add to that, I think the senior leadership has a big role to play, because there's a lot of research to show that the senior leadership thinking and behavior has a hugely cascading effect to the lower ranks and to the bottom of the pyramid. People almost shadow and mimic what the leaders do. So if you can get the mindset shift at a senior level, you have really won a big part of the battle. And these are attitudinal changes, because you cannot pretend on this. People will see through very quickly. And another way to really manage this is to get more lady leaders into those roles, so that not only are the senior leaders believing in it, there's a lot of credibility in it as well. So Unilever as a global organization this year managed to actually do that, to get to a 50-50 gender balanced leadership team. And when I joined 20 plus years ago, it was a purely 100% male board up there. And it didn't even have the nationality diversity, but right now it's hugely diverse and it's very impressive. And the results also speak for themselves. So it gives confidence to people that this works. It has to be experienced as well. So I think if you really are serious and if you want to really accelerate this, you have to start from the top.
Thank you. So we, I think for the benefit of the viewers, I would like to ask Sonali now, in terms of some of the programs that you have done and their replicability, could you perhaps frame some of them in terms of what benefits you have gained as a business, perhaps in different perspectives, right? A consumer perspective, operational perspective, and so on, from one or more programs?
Sure. So, I mean, definitely in terms of economic benefits, in terms of our cost savings, if we're looking at our operational businesses, and I think even if we're looking at the current situation and a COVID situation, it's a good thing that we moved early on this, because we're seeing the benefits now come into place in terms of how it's affecting the bottom line in a crisis situation like now. In terms of societal acceptance, obviously we work in a number of different areas. So once we're working in terms of our sustainability programs, which kind of marry into our CSR activities as well, you're seeing a lot of engagement with communities, assisting them. We're seeing employment with the communities. So it's a very mutually beneficial situation that helps you as a business in your long-term sustainability as well. And also in terms of our replicability, and if we're seeing, in terms of Sri Lanka, as our ability to meet the global goals and SDGs, it's a good way of showing other businesses and other entities that, as a country, we can do better and do more in these areas.
There is a question that Yasangi has added on, which is it important to mandate paternity leave? And in fact, whilst asking for a quick insight into that from Tanuja and Nadisha, I would like to ask you also to comment on whether the current change in conventional structures that COVID has imposed, whether that is going to help us in reforming ourselves in a more gender balanced way in terms of workplaces and some of the comments that you mentioned.
So maybe, maybe I'll go first, Ilhan. We already have a paternity leave policy in the company, and that is 3 weeks paid leave. And recently a new daddy was so happy about it. It's really really amazing to see versus Dilhan, probably our parents' generation, how fathers are more hands-on nowadays. And it has to be fair and equal when it comes to benefits. And while, of course, in the early stages of a baby's development needs, a mother has a big role. In today's society, we really want the father also to have a big role to play in those very crucial days. So whether it should be something that is mandated at a state level, I would certainly think so. I think that would be very useful to help bring up a holistic family life in Sri Lanka and a more modern family life than what we have seen maybe 50, 60 years ago. Your second question was, Tilhan, you were asking about?
In terms of whether the current destruction or reformation of workplace culture, whether it helps and how we should.
Yes. So the interesting thing is when we did a survey with our employees, who is ready to come back to work and who is not, irrespective of whether you're a mother or a father, if you had an infant in the home, people were waiting to come back to office, understandably. And whoever had manageable humans in the house, like older children, parents who are also quite independent, they were very happy to stay home and continue. So it all depends on whether your workload tripled by being restricted in the home, or whether the office was actually your mode of escape, depending on the life state you are in. But it's really incredible that only 4% wants to return permanently to office. 22% don't want to go back at all. And 75% are asking, can we have a combination? So it's very interesting that, and it will be such a pity if we lose these learnings, Dilhan. So we want to really embrace this. And if that is how people feel productive, we would definitely want to relook at the way we see work in future.
Thank you, Nadisha. Tanuja, some comments?
To just add, first of all, to say I agree 100% with everything that Nadisha just said. We introduced paternity leave this year, and we're very, very happy to have done that. But also specific, and I think what it does is it changes that mindset that it is mothers who have children, but also who must bring up children. So when your organization recognizes that we want to give you paternity leave, it sets that stage that it is both mothers and fathers who bring up children. And on the point of the changes with COVID, work from home, absolutely. We all as organizations want to look at how we use this learning better. And we were forced into it. Of course, at MAS, we had a flexible work arrangement already rolled out before, but this helped us to understand who is able to do that, what job roles, and who might struggle more. And we want to make sure that it's not only mandated because of a health and safety requirement, but that it is also used as a flexibility innovation. But also, I think another thing that happened with COVID is that people were able to see that with being in the house continuously, that these roles of cooking and cleaning and childcare don't necessarily have to sit with women, that men are as good, and that there were roles sort of becoming more fluid in the household. So we are actually looking at that from a point of view of gender-based violence, sexual and reproductive health, how we can try and bring out a little more of what happened in the home in a positive way, without losing some of that. There's been a lot of negative, but I think there's positive that we can bring out in roles, in gender roles.
I don't know about men being as good. My wife refuses to eat my cooking, but that's a fate some of us have to suffer. So with that, if I might sort of conclude, we have just a couple of minutes left. We are emerging from COVID into, sorry to use this term, but into a new norm, and that new norm is defined by chaos, volatility. It is defined by the key issues that have been highlighted earlier of health, of inequality, of climate. And what we have clearly understood here is that without clear understanding of a fresh gender balance, a more appropriate, inclusive role for women, there is no way we are going to achieve any of that. Without an understanding of nature-based solutions, there is no way we're going to achieve where we need to be. And so I think what I would conclude, and I hope my colleagues agree with me, but when you talk about failure not being an option, it extends from the climate, it extends through health, through inequality, it extends through every single area, but critically requires gender equality, because it is that which will allow us to harness the true potential of humanity. And if you really look at what has been discussed in the past few sessions, it's about saying it's about impact. Enough talk, we need impact. And without the involvement of businesses in delivering that impact, it's not going to be possible. It is no longer up to governments, WHO, UN, etc. It is a collaborative, and it is a science-based, and it is a business-based solution. And so I would like to maybe, as we enter the last minute, ask the my three colleagues, one 30-second quote, something that you would like to add to the discussion. Sonali?
not here in this one.
Just a piece of advice.
A word of advice.
Yes.
Um,
On the environment.
I would say be organic, organic to your situation, and build from there.
And be sincere. I get what you mean. Absolutely. Tanuja?
If I were to say one thing, I would say there is no reason that other companies can't take on this kind of work, because it doesn't need to be a massive program or heavily funded. It needs small interventions, but with understanding what the gap is, and even starting at as small a scale as possible, but with intent and recognizing what the gaps are in gender inequality specific.
Thank you. Nadisha?
So I would say there are 7 billion people in this planet, and everybody deserves the opportunity to bring out their best. And none of us should be standing in their way. We should be enabling every person to dream and bring out their best that was intended.
I think that is summarized beautifully by what was said at the outset. People and planet, shared prosperity for all. Thank you, Tanuja. Thank you, Nadisha. Thank you, Sonali. And everyone who joined, thank you for being here. It was an honor to share our thoughts with you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.